Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people tuning in around the whole wide world, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is Naeem Mohammed with Islamic Relief USA, where we're working together for a better world. Happy Wednesday, happy hump day. I know there are so many things you could be doing with your time right now. We're so glad that you're going to spend a little bit with us right now. Very important topic that we're going to be talking about today. As many of you guys know, Islamic Relief is doing a lot of work when we talk about emergency response, supporting refugees and what have you. But today we're going to be talking about more so on advocacy. We've been hearing a lot about Afghanistan and the recent neighbors who've come to here in the U.S. And we want to see what's happening with them, what we as citizens can do to support them, and what is their life like happening thus far. Again, really thank you guys for joining us today on the Water Relief live stream. Let's go. Hey, as I said before, this is your brother Naeem Mohammed with Islamic Relief USA, where we're working together for a better world. Today, we're going to be talking about the Afghan Adjustment Act and talking about our advocacy around this. Again, you know, at Islamic Relief, we want to make sure that we're responding to some of the relief needs that are happening around the world and here at home. But it's not just about feeding folks. Sometimes we have to advocate to make sure that things can change beyond this current situation. And it takes a coalition of people working together. So again, tune in. We have some great guests, partners who will be speaking to you today about the Afghan Adjustment Act, and we're so glad to go ahead and get started. Without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on our guests, inshallah. Hey guys, let me give you a little bit of applause for you guys both, Meredith and Jenny. How are you guys doing today?
So good. Thank you
Great.
for having us.
It's
Awesome.
good to be here with you.
Awesome. We're so glad to have you guys. Like I said, this is we try to keep it energetic, informative, and something that people enjoy coming on. And in a little bit, we'll start even adding in some of the people's comments as well as we go live. But before that, I want to let you guys introduce yourselves. So Meredith, if you can introduce yourself to our esteemed guests.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Meredith Owen, she, her. I'm the Director of Policy and Advocacy, and I work for Church World Service, an ecumenical organization representing 37 Protestant denominations and one of the 9 resettlement agencies in the United States.
Awesome. Thank you. And Jenny.
Hi, I'm Jenny Yang, and I'm the VP for Advocacy and Policy at World Relief. We are a global humanitarian relief and development organization and also one of the 9 resettlement agencies in the U.S. It's great to be here.
Great to have you guys early. Thank you guys again for being here with us today. Like I said, we have guests around the country and around the world on so many various different platforms that are checking us out to learn more about the Afghan Adjustment Act. Many of us some time ago were watching the news, seeing families leave and seeing the chaos that was happening, and then starting to see these families in our own communities and wanting to see how we can help and what we can do. And now we're informing people about the Afghan Adjustment Act. So Meredith, can you explain and tell us exactly what is the Afghan Adjustment Act?
Absolutely. An Afghan Adjustment Act is a piece of legislation that Congress has not yet formally introduced, but is an important bill that we hope passes Congress and gets enacted that would provide a permanent pathway for Afghans who were evacuated from Afghanistan since August and who entered the United States with humanitarian parole, a temporary status, so that they could have the chance to apply for their green cards or adjustment of status 1 year after arrival in the United States, which is a similar process that refugees have when they are resettled in the U.S. through the resettlement program. They are resettled, and then 1 year after arrival, they apply for their green card. So this would offer some parity and equity with that system.
Awesome. And so, and why is it necessary for this to go through? Is there not an easy? They didn't just come in the same way as, like I said, many other refugees. Is there a particular reason why we need this act to go through to make sure this happens?
And I cannot overstate the importance of an Afghan Adjustment Act. Without this, we'll have tens of thousands of additional applicants who are forced to apply for asylum. And that the asylum system is already facing an unprecedented backlog that is taking years to adjudicate cases that are already pending. It is also incredibly imperative for folks in the asylum process to have attorneys or legal representation. And so to force Afghans who we evacuated as the United States to our communities, we are standing them up for success if we pass an Adjustment Act that has more long-term integration in mind. Whereas if we don't have that, you then have an exacerbation of the asylum backlog. You have a lot more inefficiencies for the federal government trying to process these cases. It's also immoral and unfair for evacuees to be forced to stay in this limbo in between stage for an undetermined period of time while they await the adjudication of their case. And there simply aren't enough of competent pro or low bono attorneys in the United States who are able to provide legal representation for people's asylum cases throughout the duration of their case. So there are so many reasons we need an Adjustment Act so that people aren't turning to the asylum system.
Awesome. So, and definitely these protections are needed. And again, the question: how did we get here? Just the swiftness of our exiting of Afghanistan in this great vacuum. So I mean, and I guess maybe there wasn't much thought of what's the next step beyond this. I guess. So,
well, we did ask for parole. We did ask for speed. Speed equated to saving lives during the evacuation. So we believed in the process of bringing Afghan evacuees to the United States, including through humanitarian parole, among other complementary pathways. And humanitarian parole saved tens of thousands of lives.
Excellent.
But we're in this situation because during that emergency, when we turn to humanitarian parole, on the other side, it is a temporary status. It is something that isn't going to last forever. And so that means then that if there is a chance for permanent protections and permanent status, you need another pathway, since humanitarian parole does not include a pathway to citizenship.
Okay. All right. And as I was telling folks earlier and what have you, alhamdulillah, oftentimes our community looks to Islamic Relief to see what it can do and support. And we've had various outcries, communities around the country gathered in-kind donations to support families, trying to see if they could come as translators or supporters or different things. And they're still doing events to welcome these families. So I wanted to show you guys a quick clip from a recent event that just happened days ago here in the Northern Virginia area at a local mosque where they were welcoming our new Afghan neighbors.
We are here at Dar Noor in Manassas, Virginia, where, as you see, this is a day of celebration. We have so many brothers and sisters from different coalitions coming together in order to help those Afghan refugees that came into the country. Islamic Relief is helping Dar Noor through grants in order to help those refugees that came here within the U.S.
We'd like to invite you to become an advocate with us. It's very easy to do. You go to our website, irusa.org/advocacy. Our first campaign, Push Out, that we are doing this month is around the Afghan Adjustment Act. This is legislation that will allow the Afghans who are resettling into the U.S. to have a pathway towards citizenship, to have all the benefits and rights that you and I have as citizens. We hope you'll join us not only in this campaign, but in future campaigns we're going to have throughout the year. Thank you once again for joining us.
Awesome. Again, if you're just joining us, this is the What Relief live stream where we're talking about the Afghan Adjustment Act and what it means to families who've recently arrived and what it means to those who are trying to advocate for those families. A question before we start talking about families. One more question for you, Meredith. Are there anyone right now that are really championing this? Does it look like we'll have positive movement on it, or there seem to be any roadblocks to this going through?
Well, we don't have a piece of standalone bipartisan legislation introduced formally yet into Congress. So that's a challenge. But what we're hoping for and what we're pushing for is that Congress will include an Afghan Adjustment Act as part of its negotiations to fund the federal government for the rest of fiscal year 2022. And those negotiations are happening right now as they prepare an omnibus appropriations package. So we want an Adjustment Act to be part of that legislation that ends up passing and getting enacted next month.
All right, excellent. Thank you for that. So, Jenny, you're up. Question for you, Jenny, especially the work that you're doing, World Relief and others. So, what's the situation for families, or what's life like for families who've arrived here recently, and what was that process like, and what are they experiencing now?
Sure. So I think it's important to think about the numbers because the U.S. evacuated a little over 50,000 individuals who were then resettled to communities across the United States over the last few months. And so you have over 50,000 individuals who are coming to the United States. And for most of them, they were housed at military bases for several weeks, if not several months, until the U.S. government could actually finalize some of their paperwork. And from these military bases, they were then transported to various communities across the United States for them to really be integrated and resettled into local communities, ones that Church Will Service and World Relief, as examples, were facilitating for many of these individuals. And so we're really kind of at the tail end right now of resettling, just a few thousand left on some of the military bases. The U.S. government is transitioning the rest of the evacuees who are on these military bases into their local communities and homes. And so I think if you think about that journey, it's a very challenging one because not only was the evacuation just a few days, a few weeks long, but then you had to transition to the United States where you couldn't go directly into your new home. You had to stay on these military bases. And then you're being settled into communities where there's a lot of challenges around housing, just as an example, and many other challenges associated with that. And so I think for many of the Afghan families that we've been working with, there's a desire to really get settled as quickly as possible. For many of them, they've really had to leave everything behind and are coming here with little to nothing to really start their lives anew. And so, as you were mentioning, the dinners, like you saw in the video there, of communities coming together to really welcome our Afghan neighbors is critically important so that Afghans can feel a sense of community, but also know that there's people who are really welcoming them and wanting them to reside in their communities. And so I'll just share one story with you. There was a man named David who was an Afghan translator for our U.S. State Department personnel for 19 years, actually. His two brothers were also in the special forces of Afghanistan. And so for 19 years, he was basically working as a translator. And so when the U.S. announced that there was going to be a withdrawal, he spent in mid-August several days actually packing up all the U.S. military equipment. And then on the fourth day, his contacts at the U.S. military told him, when you go back home tonight, you have to come back with your family because we're going to evacuate you all because we're going to leave in a few weeks. And so he actually went home and they spent 3 hours packing up all of their stuff. And then they actually were evacuated out of Kabul. They went to Doha for one day. They went to Germany at a U.S. military base for a week. And then they went to a military base near El Paso, Texas, for a few weeks after that, where they remained for almost a month. Wow. And then that's when they were connected with our U.S. Office in Fort Worth, Texas. So not super close, but then they eventually were resettled to the Fort Worth, Texas area. And he actually was so grateful for everything that He now volunteers actually with World Relief at our
Oh wow.
office there as a translator, and he's reached out to us saying he wants to do everything he can to help welcome other families. But one of the challenges that they had was they packed 2 bags in those 3 hours that they had.
Right.
But then when they were evacuated, those 2 bags were left behind. So they literally came with
With
nothing.
nothing. Yeah.
And so they basically had to get, all new clothes. Actually, one of the first things that the mother did is she got some fabric, and the first thing she did was started sewing dresses for her
Oh,
family,
oh wow.
because they didn't have any clothes. And so one of the things that, and so as they transitioned to their new apartment, we had to get social security cards for them. We had to make sure their employment authorization documents went through so that they could start working. We had to enroll their kids in school. And all the while, we had a lot of local communities reaching out to help volunteer with this family. But again, I think it just demonstrates to you the challenge that many of these, thousands of Afghans are experiencing, with really coming with little to nothing,
Right.
but also having to go through a lot of paperwork and processes to just transition, to start working and really even having the kids go to school here as well.
I mean, I can't only imagine trying to fit a lifetime into 2 bags in 3 hours, and then probably taking the most precious things that you were expecting to have with you, that nothing, nothing just for comfort, but those most precious things, and then even losing those things, being in the world with none of your mementos, none of the things that you cling to for your identity, and then being dropped in the middle of a place that you've never been before. So I only can imagine the great difficulty that there is. And it's great that organizations like you guys and Islamic Relief and other community groups are coming to aid to these families. So the question too, again for you, Jenny, so what has the community response like when they enter these communities, or how are regular community members maybe interacting or trying to make a difference for these families who are arriving at our doorsteps?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when all of us were watching the evacuations happening in August, it really was a gripping moral moment for all of us where we knew that these individuals were being evacuated and were coming here. And so we've really seen an outpouring of support from people all across this country, from faith communities to business owners and others. And we have one company, for example, that is donating it's a mattress company, and they're donating all new mattresses for us as we set up apartments for our Afghan neighbors. And big companies like Uber and even airlines are donating miles and credit on rideshare apps, just so our new Afghan neighbors can get what they need to just adjust to life here. So
Awesome.
really, I think a lot of resettlement organizations have seen an outpouring of support from local communities that want to get involved. And so there continues to remain a lot of challenges, though, I think, in any U.S. office that is receiving Afghans and other refugees, that we always need more volunteers
Right.
to get involved, to help set up apartments, for donated good and other things, which I know for you all as well, you've been seeing a lot of positive response around that. But that continues to be a need in communities. And I would say also generally, I think housing continues to be a big challenge for
Okay.
many of the Afghans as well. In a lot of cities, we're just not seeing housing available. So I live
Okay.
in Baltimore, Maryland, right outside of Baltimore, and we received hundreds of Afghans. And over December and January, most all of them were living at a hotel because the
Mm.
housing market where I live in Baltimore is really depleted. It's just not available,
Right.
especially for families where they have 4 or 5 kids, or they have larger families in general. To find 3-4 bedroom housing is that's affordable is just not been feasible. So the need for housing continues to be a challenge. And then on top of that, a lot of these families have gone through significant trauma. And so for many of us, being able to provide trauma counseling and psychosocial support has been critical. And then, as Meredith mentioned, we have continuing legal challenges for a lot of our
Right.
Afghan neighbors who are here on a temporary immigration status, and now are going to need to file for asylum if Congress doesn't pass an Afghan Adjustment Act. So all of these are ongoing needs, but the fact that there have been so many community members donating goods in kind and volunteering their time to really have community built up to welcome these individuals has really been overwhelming, actually.
And so, I mean, you say that if this doesn't get passed, is there a countdown that that I guess when the families from the point to the first families arrive, is there a time where this needs to happen by, or like you said, they'll have to start a claim of time? Is there a countdown on that?
Yeah, so there are deadlines associated with
Mm-hmm.
the Afghans that are here on parole. So that does expire after a year, and so there's a need for them to renew their status if there is that available. And so even for individuals that come into the United States that apply for asylum, there's a 1 year filing deadline, which means that for Afghans as well, you have basically a year to apply for asylum. And so, as Meredith mentioned, the asylum system is significantly backlogged. There's hundreds of thousands of
Right.
cases in the system, and you're talking about individuals that were selected by your US government, evacuated here, and then to leave them in legal limbo, to say
Right.
that you have to basically now apply for asylum within a backlog system, when historically we have adjusted status for nationalities that our government had assisted in some way or another, means that Congress has to basically do its job to pass the Afghan Adjustment Act
Right.
and not leave over 50,000 individuals in the US having to apply for asylum.
Okay, really appreciate that. There was a question from the field, like, and I mean, I don't know if you guys would know this. One gentleman was asking, are there still people being evacuated, or scheduled to be evacuated, and are waiting to come here to the States?
So, oh, go
Either
ahead,
one.
Meredith. You wanna?
There's certainly not enough. We have been calling on the administration to significantly expand the number of Afghans who are at risk to be evacuated and processed to the United States, both those who are still in Afghanistan as well as those who are in other host countries. And so, although the administration has come out and said that it will honor a commitment to the people of Afghanistan to continue to help process people and welcome people here, we haven't seen that translated into high numbers of people who are actually being processed to the United States. So that is also something to continue to hold the administration accountable to.
And maybe you said this before, because I mean, years ago, I looked after a team. We worked with several resettlement agencies. When people come to the end of their funding, when they came to the end of their funding, there's some of those hard cases, and you guys would know this very well, that there's some hard cases where families needed just a little more assistance to get truly resettled. Maybe they need a little more assistance with rental assistance, or some some funds that would help them to recertify, or do something where assistance with education. But those things are open to people who've come here as refugees. But if you're in the way these families come, they don't have those stipends, right? That are do they have the same type of stipends that a refugee family had came here to the U.S. would get assigned to them, and the caseworker? Do they get all those or benefits?
Congress did authorize Afghan evacuees to receive the same benefits and services that refugees receive who are resettled through the resettlement program back in September, when it passed a continuing resolution. However, there was a huge challenge that World Relief, Church World Service, and the other 7 resettlement agencies faced, which was that the previous administration had significantly dismantled the infrastructure that
Yes.
exists to provide services. And the current administration hadn't yet invested in robust rebuilding of the program. And so we were rebuilding at the same time as we were resettling record numbers of Afghan evacuees. And we did so in partnership with huge numbers of volunteers and private philanthropy support and interagency collaboration to help programmatically. But the fact of the matter is, we're still rebuilding the resettlement program from the last administration, and we don't want to stop rebuilding simply because the number of Afghan evacuees has gone down. we still need to keep that momentum for rebuilding. And I'm sure Jenny has additional thoughts on that, but just want to make that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a significant legislative victory, honestly, to have Afghan parolees legislatively become eligible for refugee benefits. And actually, what's interesting is that originally, when that legislation was passed, we were pushing for the Afghan Adjustment Act at that time. And the authorization of benefits for Afghan parolees passed, but the Afghan Adjustment Act did not pass. And so it, as Meredith was saying, it continues to be a challenge in general when we think about long-term integration. And so the refugee benefits that parolees do get is really a short-term cushion for them, just in the beginning months. And so I think a lot of community support continues to be needed in the ongoing months that are upcoming, just regarding employment and other challenges that a lot of our Afghan neighbors may have. And so I think that community engagement part is critical, as well as continuing advocacy as well, so that Congress can authorize the Afghan Adjustment Act, among other things that it really needs to do.
Right. And then we're coming a little close to our time, because I know you guys are busy, got things going on, can't hang out with me on Facebook and the metaverse all day long. But as we come to a close, and we always like to make sure that the folks looking on at home, whether it be Instagram or wherever they are around the world, what would you say, like, some marching orders for them? How can they be the most helpful to these families today, in you guys? I mean, in your experience, I don't know who wants to jump in there first, and you can give your closing at the same time.
Call your member of Congress. Tell your 2 senators and 1 representative that they need to support and pass an Afghan Adjustment Act, especially as part of the upcoming federal funding package that has to pass Congress next month.
Awesome. And Jenny?
Yeah, I would echo that and say 2 things. The first is contact your member of Congress, as I think Islamic Relief USA has maybe actions on their website that you can connect directly with them, and contact, email, call. And we really have a short window, so doing that in the next couple of weeks is going to be critically important. And then the second thing I would say is volunteer with a local agency or organization that is helping our Afghan neighbors. There's almost every state is resettling Afghan refugees, and so reaching out to a resettlement organization to volunteer with them, to set up apartments and just get to know your Afghan neighbors is going to be crucially important. So I would say contact your member of Congress and then volunteer locally with a local agency.
Awesome. I want to thank both of you guys again for joining us, being with us, and informing our communities. And again, anytime you guys want to get on and meet the folks here at Islamic Relief, the door's always open. So thank you both, and
thank
enjoy
you
the rest
so
of your
much.
day. Take care, guys.
Bye.
All right, everybody. Alhamdulillah. Again, I'm so glad to have Jenny and Meredith on with us about talking about the Afghan Adjustment Act. I hope you guys learned a bunch. But we're not done yet. It's not over just yet. Before we move on and before we close today, as they were saying, that one, you can get involved in your local community. Groups like Islamic Relief and others are doing packouts or are putting together in-kind gifts to families who are in desperate need. I know even people on my own team in Baltimore, they'll be distributing winter coats and other items just this on Thursday, inshallah, in Baltimore, in coordination with one of our local partners, Muslim Social Services Agency, with Imam Hassan. So alhamdulillah, we know you guys are already doing this work in Islamic Relief. Supporters, volunteers, and others, you guys are included in this work. But now when we start to talk about advocacy, and you may have been starting to see social media posts from Islamic Relief, and starting to see emails that come to you to get you to join and become one of our Islamic Relief advocates. To tell you a little bit more about this, I have one of our staff members. Without further ado, if you can please welcome Sister Asil. Assalamu alaikum. Don't worry, you get the applause too. How are you, Asil?
That's awesome. Thanks, Naeem. I'm great, and I'm so excited to be on today and to tell everybody about these opportunities. I think Islamic Relief, we've been doing amazing work when it comes to fundraising for disasters, fundraising for long-term relief for our communities, and we've even had opportunities where people can come in and volunteer. But now we want to offer even more opportunities for people to give back. And this is the advocacy work, the ability to do actions that are so easy from the comfort of your home. During the pandemic, many advocates and lobbyists have switched to virtual advocacy because we can't go to Congress anymore in person like we used to be able to. Legislators are expecting that we're going to be getting in touch with them via electronic campaigns, via phone calls, via town halls that are all virtual. So you get to do this advocacy from the comfort of your home. And the way that you sign up is you go to irusa.org/advocacy. You can help by signing up, and you're going to be getting action alerts from Islamic Relief USA advocates. And you will be able to push out to your networks, to your neighbors, letting them know that this opportunity is easy and you can do this, and it is part of our faith, right? So, and you know what our faith tradition says: if you see an injustice, then you've got to do something with it with your hands. And if you can't do something with your hands, then you've got to do something with your mouth and speak out. And then the last is to make dua, and that is the least that you can do. Right. This is the speak out part, right? So we are providing that from the comfort of your home.
And I mean, to add to that too, like you see how easy it is. I think last week, Atil, you gave the presentation to the whole staff, and people were signing up, and within less than like 5 minutes, they had already. I mean, I did it myself, and I'm starting to get I sent a letter to Tim Kaine. I sent a letter to the governor, and it was just like, it was almost like in like 5 minutes, I became an IRUSA advocate. It's that easy, right?
It really is. It really is. And we are going to be advocating on the issues that Islamic Relief supporters already care about. We want to eradicate hunger. We want to stop climate change. We want to help refugees. We want to empower women. And those are the humanitarian issues that we're going to be advocating on. So if you sign up today, you will start getting alerts, and you will have the opportunity to really make a difference. And it's from the comfort of your home. It does not get any easier than that. And so for today, your homework, if you're on Facebook, if you're viewing this on Facebook, I've linked the Afghan Adjustment Act campaign. It's right under there. You're going to click. Within 2 seconds, you'll be done. And you'll be making an impact.
I think you can also go here directly too, right? If you go here at irusa.org/helping refugees, you'll be able to do the same thing right there, right? You can sign up to become an advocate. Awesome. Absolutely. So, and what are there any other campaigns that we should be that you're looking forward to? I mean, I know right now we're trying to get people on board here. Are there anything else are you thinking further down the road that people say like, hey, once we get you on board for this, this is just the beginning. We're looking at other issues too.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely, Naeem. So next month is International Women's Day. Look out for actions on ways that you can empower women. We will also be gearing up for Ramadan, and we are going to push out a campaign to end using hunger as a weapon of war. It's a huge one that we're all going to be advocating on. And then after that, it's going to be Earth Day. We're going to do something to help eradicate climate change. So yes, it's all coming. And so this one act is going to get you started with us, inshallah.
So it's amazing too, because like you said, it's not most of the time people, when they get involved, I already thinking that, I'm going to come to, pre-pandemic, I'm going to go to a fundraising dinner, or I'm going to see the brother at the mosque and then put my money in the box, or and then as time went on, they're going to go to one of our meal packs or something like that and pack boxes or food to give to families. But now we're like, this is a whole nother way that our volunteers can get involved with Islamic Relief. As she said, become an advocate. Even she said, when we see something wrong, even we know, like even in Surah Tamarun, I know that our president Anwar Khan likes to, like one of his favorite surah, the quote, it talks about the urging the feeding of the needy. So I mean, that's a direct as a directive of us, who people who recognize the coming of the next life, that we must advocate for these individuals, even to do those kind of acts, but also to speak up, to encourage people. Because oftentimes I tell people, it's not so much that the resources to feed, to help, are there. We just need to connect with those people to encourage them to do what we should be doing, and we would see a reduction in poverty and injustice everywhere. Are there any closing thoughts before we head out? Asil?
I'll just say, Naeem, that a lot of people think that their little clique is not going to make a difference, and that it's plicativism or whatever they call it, and that's just not the case, right? We're in a new, right? You mentioned at the very beginning of this episode, welcome to the metaverse. This is where everybody's living right now, right? Yeah. And that includes our legislators. They are expecting that we're going to be taking these meetings on virtually. They're going to be expecting that we're not going to be walking up the hill anymore, that we're going to be writing letter campaigns, and that we're going to be signing pledges, and that we're going to be doing tweet storms. And so they're expecting it. We need to show up. We as Muslim Americans need to show up, and it can be done now across the United States. You don't have to be near Washington, D.C. to make a difference. You can do it from wherever you are, and those legislators in D.C. are listening and paying attention because they know that's where we're at.
Awesome. Again, thank you, Asil. Just again, easy, because we've been talking about the Afghan Adjustment Act. Go here to irusa.org/helping refugees. You will be able to not only support that act, but you'll also be able to join the advocates. Become an IRUSA advocate, where you'll join a host of people who'll be using their voice, they'll be using their mouse, they'll be using their keyboards or their social media accounts to bring awareness and having positive change around the world. Thank you again, Asil, for being with us, and we're going to have you on again as those other days and those other times to advocate, to galvanize the community. And again, this is a home for you to come back and do just that. So
thank you, Naeem, so much. Thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Excellent. Alhamdulillah. All right, everyone. Again, Jazakallah khairan for checking us out, being with us today. We are so excited to have many of you join and become an IRUSA advocate. We want you out there in your community, supporting those refugees from Afghanistan and other places that are in desperate need. You can also join us at irusa.org/volunteers and learn about how you can help those families the same way, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.